So let's begin with this. I make decent money, but I am in no way rich. I like to take my family on vacation and have been stymied for the last couple of years. So this summer, I decided to do something I thought was great. I paid for my family to go to Disneyland, not just my wife and kids, but also my father-in-law, mother-in-law, my wife's brother, and his wife and kids. So 10 people. I also rented a McMansion with a pool and everything. I bought all the groceries and rented a truck so I could ferry the luggage, and in case of emergency, we would have a vehicle. My kids are in their teens, and my nephews are a few years younger. My immediate family did not require any help with the kids, and realistically, neither did my in-laws. So we get to the house and the problems start. The room I picked for my wife and me is the nicest. My father-in-law and mother-in-law chose to stay in the pool house. This left 5 other bedrooms for 6 people. Brother-in-law and sister-in-law, my 2 kids, their 2 kids. Simple, right? Not so fast. Why did I get the best room? They hadn't had a nice time alone in years. Why did my kid pick the room with the ensuite? Why did one room have a bigger TV? Why do we have to cook some meals? Why don't we just order every meal? Geez, I went to my room and went to sleep. First day. More BS. Why do we have to wait in line? Why don't we get the tour guide that lets us skip the lines? My wife started joining in. She said we shouldn't be cooking at the house and that it wasn't fair to her and her sister-in-law to be stuck with the cleaning. My kids always help. I do too. Brother-in-law sits on his butt though. My in-laws joined the fun at the end of the day. They didn't want to wait for the Uber. Could they take the truck and meet us back at the house? My wife said to let them. I got sick of it. I ordered everyone pizza, and then while they were gorging themselves, I called an Uber and went to a hotel that I'm a super shiny member of. I used my points to book a suite for the next 6 days. I texted my wife and told her I would catch up with everyone in the morning at the park. She's mad that I left her to deal with those ungrateful, greedy people. I'm sitting in the pool enjoying a gin and tonic and writing this because I left the park after seeing the new superhero stuff there. Her brother and sister-in-law are now bugging her to give up the nice room since she's alone. Now she's not on their side. Too late. So am I the idiot for leaving them all to sort out their stuff after I went out of my way to do something nice and they crapped all over it? Not the idiot. This is actually hilarious. You took a vacation from your entitled relative's vacation. Maybe you should have warned your wife, brought her along and left the other relatives to figure out things for themselves. I can't even fathom someone sponsoring me for a free vacation like that and saying anything but thank you so much and let me get your suitcase for you. This is fantastic. Next year, tell them since the last vacation wasn't up to their standards, you're going to let them pay for this one and show you how it's done properly. Enjoy yourself, man. Your kids are old enough to handle themselves, and your wife can enjoy her lovely family. I read correctly. You paid for the trip? For everyone? What is wrong with all these people calling you an idiot? You went above and beyond for your wife's family. They're greedy and ungrateful. Your wife should have shut that down instead of joining them in the whining. I mean, the wife just seemed to be complaining about having to cook and clean for everyone. So I have a bit of sympathy for her there. But the rest is lucky that they still have reservations and a vacation. Update. My wife went beast mode. She told me she was spending the night with me at the hotel after the game. So I'm back at the house tomorrow. My brother-in-law has been told if he even looks at our room, he and his wife are going to a motel. In-laws were told to Uber wherever they wanted. We're still taking everyone out for one dinner, but all other meals not made in the house are pay your own way. And brother-in-law's responsible for cleaning up after meals. Honestly didn't think she had that in her. I, 29, was married to a wonderful man. Unfortunately, he was in the military and he died while serving overseas. I have 3 small kids at home, and the first couple of years were tough on me. My mother-in-law was very nearly perfect. She helped me cope. She helped me through my depression. She cooked, cleaned, and taxied my kids around. I cannot praise her enough. After a while, I started being able to handle my life again. Life insurance and benefits have helped a lot, so we aren't suffering financially. I'm lucky enough to have a 100% work from home job as well. I've recently started dating again. I wasn't really looking, and the first little while was terrible. I've been with my husband since we were in high school. He always treated me like I was everything. This is not what I experienced in a dating pool. But 2.5 years after my husband passed away, I did meet someone in a group I belong to that does historical reenactments, Viking stuff mostly. He's a single dad, and he's sweet, and his daughter gets along with my kids. But now my mother-in-law has started saying that I'm terrible for moving on so quickly, and she's been trying to interfere in my new relationship. She has been excellent about giving me the occasional weekend off from my kids, but now when I ask her, she wants to know if it's to spend time with him. I am not gonna lie, I miss being with a man, especially one who doesn't think a date is a text at 2 a.m. So now I get my girlfriend to watch my kids when I want some alone time to see if this could go anywhere. But now my mother-in-law is saying I'm keeping my kids away from her. I can't win. All of my husband's relatives are calling and texting me not to keep the kids away from her. I got sick of having to explain myself and finally confronted her. Words were said, ending in me telling her that I would never keep the kids away from her, but that she was being a witch to me, and that if she kept it up, I would move away. I know I was rude. I know she's still mourning her son, and she was a single mom too. I know I might be setting myself up for disappointment with my new friend, but I just can't do this anymore. She is just mean sometimes. Am I the idiot? No idiots here. Your mother-in-law needs grief counseling. Unfortunately, she's so blinded by her grief and probably the rage of losing her child that I don't even think she means what she's saying to you. You're not an idiot either. This is a very hard situation, and of course you lost your temper, but you're processing your own feelings about grief, moving on, etc. too. Maybe you could talk to your mother-in-law into trying a grief therapy group or something with you. Big hugs to you both. OP, your mother-in-law probably feels like a piece of her son is still with her through her connection to you and the kids. You're doing your best to move forward, which is the healthiest thing you can do. But to her, you moving forward might feel like she's losing her son all over again. Tell all your relatives that you're not keeping the kids away. She just won't watch them because she hasn't moved on and wants you to keep from doing so as well. You are the idiot. I'm a stranger, so take my advice with a grain of salt. But I think 2.5 years is quick, especially with young kids involved. Take your time and be careful with bringing anyone into your kids' lives. They've already lost their father. They don't need a new man in their house. Disagree. It's been years and you're moving on too quickly? What were you supposed to do? Remain alone to honor his memory? She's never going to feel like it's been long enough. She might still be mourning, but that does not mean you need to put your life on hold until she's ready. You do not owe your mother-in-law a lifetime of mourning and loneliness. She doesn't get to choose when you enter a romantic relationship again. I, female 26, have a wife, Katie, female 26. I have a younger sister, Lydia, 22, who got engaged to her fiancé, Seth, male 24, around a month ago. Seth's family's pretty well off. His parents work in the business sector and can afford a lavish lifestyle. Although Seth has a decent job, his parents send him money regularly. He proposed to Lydia with a ring that they both constantly brag about, bragging about how expensive it is. Seth claims the ring is worth about $50,000. Katie is a jeweler and has been one for a long time, so Lydia asked if she could clean and polish the ring as a favor. Katie agreed. She told me later in private that the ring was made of cheap materials and was worth no more than $30. After a long conversation, we decided it would be best if I told Lydia. I talked to Lydia in private and explained to her as gently as possible that Katie had a good look at the ring and that it was not worth the amount of money that Seth said it was. Lydia was shocked. She said that Seth must have been scammed by whoever he bought the ring off of. Lydia later talked to Seth. I wasn't there for the conversation, but apparently Seth knew the ring was cheap and was hoping Lydia wouldn't find out. Lydia ended up calling off the engagement and is currently staying with a friend and not talking to Seth. My parents are furious with Katie and me and are accusing us of sabotaging my sister's relationship and saying that we should have minded our own business. They say that there's unfair pressure on men to spend a lot of money on rings and that we were being selfish. Many of our extended family also think we're the villains, so I'm wondering if what we did was the right thing. Edit. Lydia wanted the ring cleaned and polished as she planned a photo shoot. Lydia isn't mad at me or Katie for telling her. She's just very upset that Seth lied to her. The fact that Seth lied and said the ring was worth $50,000 and really worth $30 is the key here. He lied when he didn't have to, repeatedly from the sounds of it. It's not about the ring. It's about dishonesty and trust. It's about character and honor. Not the idiot. She needed to know that he was lying to her. This was my thought exactly. The ring is irrelevant. It's the fact that the lie was comically huge. Yes, there's advertising pressure on men to buy the most expensive ring ever, but many women don't care whether he spends thousands of dollars on an engagement ring or not. Seth could have gotten something reasonably nice that he could afford and been honest with your sister about it. He chose not to. No one forced Seth to lie about the ring's value, let alone continue to brag about it. However, he chose to do that, and his deception would have been discovered whenever Lydia attempted to insure the ring. I'm wondering if Seth is so dumb, or if he lied about the ring because he had no intention of going through with the marriage and set you up to break the truth to Lydia. The person that everyone should be upset with is Seth and no one else. I, 38 female, recently quit my job at a big tech company, making $200K plus, and my husband also makes a similar amount working in tech. I lived very frugally and saved 70 to 75% of my income with my husband. We now have a nest egg big enough to retire and enjoy our passions. He loves carpentry and is making custom furniture, and I'm dog walking and making custom cakes. Now we make enough to support ourselves since our house is paid off. With our nest egg, I think even with inflation, we should make it for the rest of our lives. So we decided to work for ourselves, which meant we didn't make as much. My husband still works as a contractor, but the contract expires in 6 months, and I've already retired. I was burned out already for years, but forced myself through it because I was afraid of retiring during the global uncertainty. But it looks like it's a crapshoot no matter what, so I just retired to enjoy my life. The problem is I paid for my parents' housing for nearly a decade. My brother has ADHD and lives with them and has been fired from every job he's had. I believe that my parents coddle him, and not due to his ADHD. He got meningitis as a baby, and while he didn't have any lasting issues, my parents were always really soft on him because of it and let him get away with everything. Now he's in his 30s and can't hold down a job. So my parents are still raising him, and my mom never worked because my dad was always the breadwinner. But my dad was laid off a decade ago and couldn't find other work in his field, so he's been doing part-time jobs. When they couldn't make rent, they asked me for help and guilted me into it because I made more. So I pay roughly $700 a month for them to stay in their place and have done so for the last decade. In the beginning, I tried to get my mom and brother to work, but they kept saying how tired they were and kept putting off sending out resumes to the point I gave up. About 4 months ago, I told them of my plan to retire early and start my own business. And of course, I was called selfish and ungrateful for cutting them off because I make more and am choosing to quit. Then this month, the landlord came to ask for money, and they ran to me for money again, even though I gave them 4 months' notice and made it clear that this month's rent was the last month I'm paying and demanding I pay another month because they weren't ready. I told them they had 4 months to figure things out, but I was sick of paying their rent when my parents were still in their early 60s and could work. Now I'm getting repeated calls, texts, and emails, calling me cruel and greedy for cutting them off. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I have ADHD and have a career in engineering. Your parents just raised an idiot. If they keep asking you for money, go out see with them. Not your pig, not your farm. Good luck with your retirement. I'm very freaking jealous. I think the correct term is a parasite. They raised a leech. Agreed. 4 months is more than most would get. You complain about your parents enabling your brother, but that $700 enables all of them. ADHD is tough, but millions manage to work with it. It's time for your brother to figure it out. Between the 3 grown adults, they can't come up with $700 a month? Even a part-time job would make up that $700 in a few weeks. ADHD is just an excuse in his case. As someone with ADHD, it's hard, but manageable, and a part of life. Suck it up and work with it. You'll not be given handouts your whole life. Also, that $700 is enabling them. I'm glad you stood your ground and cut them off. They'd have the same excuse next month if you paid this time. Both you and your partner deserve to live the life you've worked so hard to build. However, there is a huge difference between giving a helping hand and surrendering your life to enslavement. I'm 26 female, a PhD student, and I've been dating Sam, 29 male, for the last 3 years. Early on in the relationship, he told me that he's no contact with his family. I've asked him why, but he said that it's not something he wants to discuss. I haven't brought it up since then, and he hasn't dropped any hints as to why. This past weekend, I was at a conference where one of the keynote speakers had Sam's relatively uncommon last name. I texted him a flyer picture and asked, "LMAO, is this your long-lost aunt or something?" He texted me back saying, "No, that's my mom." I talked briefly with Sam's mom during the Q&A session that followed her presentation. She was so nice and patient when answering my questions that I wondered why Sam was no contact with her. After I came home from the conference, I told Sam that I had talked to his mom, and she seemed really nice. He dropped his fork on the floor and completely blew up at me. He accused me of betraying him, even though I told him she had no idea who I was, and that I talked to her to ask her questions about her research. He also said that his no contact with his family automatically meant that I was forbidden from talking to them without his permission. I was so scared because I'd never seen him get angry or raise his voice at anything. So I booked an Uber to a friend's place and told him that I was staying with said friend until he gave me a genuine apology and an explanation as to why he's no contact with his family. You are the idiot. She was so nice and patient while doing her job that you questioned his reason for no contact. That's super naive and so disrespectful to your boyfriend. You then went home and told him, "She's really nice." That blows my mind. It is a massive betrayal to him and what he went through to get to the point of going no contact. People don't stumble upon no contact, so it's a huge decision. How someone is in a professional setting doesn't mean that's how they are in their private life. For example, you likely just came home and told your boyfriend that his abuser seemed really nice, which is a horrible betrayal. Although I feel like he should be disclosing why he's no contact, as you've been together so long, you must respect his boundary. I think that saying, "I was horribly abused," is a perfectly good explanation, and if he's disclosed that, it should be more than enough for OP. Girl, after one brief work-related conversation with a stranger, you no longer trust the judgment of your boyfriend of 3 years to determine if he should have contact with his mother? Then, rather than trying to talk to him, you ran away and demanded an apology, without knowing any of the past histories that made him no contact. What if his family abandoned him at some point? What if his mother did? Without knowing his past trauma, you just did something that could be reopening all of his wounds, while expecting him to apologize to you and open up a part of his life that he never has before. You're just as awful as his mother. I guess you'll be shocked when he cuts you out of his life as well. My male teen, stepdad 32, is a total gym rat. I used to think the guy was cool, but now that I know him better, that's his whole personality. Everything is about calories and repetitions in this house. He's always telling me to watch my food, to be aware of what I eat, and to lift more, despite my being in good shape because I'm a swimmer. I don't think the guy is a step monster or a bad dude, but he's oblivious. Now, some important context is that my grandparents own my mom's, 45's, house. They're the same as me. They like my stepdad, but also think he's kind of random. Now, I usually spend 3 weeks at my dad's and 1 week at my mom's, a personal choice. And my room at my mom's is my childhood room, because that's where we lived when my parents were married. The house also has another 3 rooms, not as big as mine, but big enough. My stepdad talked about having a home gym for a while, and I knew my mom was on board. To be totally and completely honest, I thought they would use some of the other rooms and not mine. But I was shocked when I came home from my dad's last week and found that they had switched all my stuff to one of the smaller rooms. I can't begin to describe what I felt. It's not that they shipped me off to one of the little rooms. It's how they went through my stuff and moved my things around with total disregard for my privacy, because I had a lot of stuff, and it's somewhere in boxes with little to no care if they were fragile or not. And then, the fact that they kind of kicked me out of my childhood room. The reason? My stepdad said it was cool to have an ensuite in his gym. I just stared at them, did a 180 and got out of there. Then at the park, I called my granddad and told him what they'd done. He drove quickly and flipped out on them because, number 1, they never mentioned a gym. Number 2, the room was mine. What the heck? And so on. I said that I didn't care about the room anymore, but my granddad said that they could take the gym out and give me my room back, or they could pay rent. They obviously gave me my room back. Now my stepdad is kind of chill about it. He said I could have said something. Like what? As if I was expecting this. But my mom is angry because I called my granddad and because he chose my comfort over hers. She said I'm here 1 week and I could have just put my butt in a new room. She was totally hammering me, and honestly, I felt bad. I don't know if I'm in the right anymore, and I'm wondering if I'm an idiot. Edit. She's always moving my furniture around and rearranging my room to fit her liking. She tried to paint it twice, but I made her change her mind. She thinks my room is only borrowed, so she can do as she likes. My granddad is kind of chill about what my mom does to the home, because it'll be hers one day. And my mom has always told me this is her house. So now that she's mad at me, I don't know. I do feel like I did something wrong. Not the idiot. The house belongs to your grandparents, so first of all, they get to decide. The room was yours, your childhood room. If I found out my parents ever did that to me, I would be super furious. How dare they take your stuff out, touch them, and move them whatever to another room just because someone who came out of nowhere, your stepdad, decided to put a gym there and do all that to your room? LOL, that sounds like a joke. And shame on your mother for accepting it. It is your room. You don't trade someone's personal stuff without asking them. Just like your stepfather thought you could have said something before calling your grandfather, your mother and stepdad could have said something to you before moving your things. And the question of moving your room should have been an absolute no. Mothers should always have their kids' backs. She should never have put her husband's wants over her son's right to feel secure. I thought it was more about the mom not liking having her authority challenged. OP says she constantly says it's her house, and OP's actions have forced her to confront reality, which is that the house isn't hers. It will eventually be hers, but until her father dies, she's not the owner. Hey, don't you think it's cool he has an ensuite to his gym? Sure, it used to be your ensuite, but why are you being a crybaby about it? Can't you be happy for him finally having the thing he took from you? Have a conversation with your mother. Tell her it's clear she no longer sees the house as your home. It's just a place you visit sometimes. And maybe it's time you stop visiting. My husband's mom and I, female 26, don't get along at all. It was fine at first, till our disagreement started to get bigger. Our last disagreement was because she wanted to sell the family house and give her older son more money than my husband. Mother-in-law told me to stay out of it, and my husband said he was fine with it. She put some distance between us and stopped inviting me to events. Fine, but I told my husband I expect him to stay home with me when I'm uninvited. She got married days ago, and it goes without saying I was not invited. I asked my husband to promise to stay home with me and not go. He got defensive and said that this was his mom's wedding, and there was no reason for him not to attend. After a big argument about it, I refused to speak to him. and eventually he said he'd stay home with me. However, he said he would hang out with some friends instead on the wedding day. I was skeptical, so I called his friends, and they said they didn't see him. I knew where he was. I felt betrayed, and I wanted to catch him red-handed, so I got dressed and went to his mom's wedding. He was actually there. I was fuming when I saw him. He saw me and started following me as I turned and made my way out. I yelled at him, calling him a liar and a manipulator. He tried to get me to quiet down since people were staring, but I lost it with him and said that he betrayed the promise he made me and that his word meant crap to me. He got defensive, saying that he really wanted to be there for his mom and at the same time couldn't handle me being upset with him and giving him silence, so he hid it from me. I told him to get out of my face and went home. He came back looking angry, saying I made a scene at his mom's wedding and humiliated him when I started yelling at him. I refused to argue, but his family came at me calling me horrible and controlling and saying that my husband was a saint for still enduring my crappy behavior. I blocked his sister, who was constantly arguing, saying my husband has free will and should be able to decide where to go and be without my consent. This made him get angrier. We haven't talked since then. Wow, your mother-in-law sounds crazy. First, she decides, on her own, without any input from you whatsoever, how she wants to divvy up her estate. Although both her heirs are fine with it, she didn't consider your opinion. Next, she may have gotten upset with you when you started yelling at your husband at her wedding. Yeah, your mother-in-law is a whack job. Your mother-in-law. You are the idiot, OP. Wow, control freak much? This is his mother, and you have no right to try and tell your husband he can't have anything to do with her or go to her wedding because your eggshell feelings are hurt. The good news is, after the husband divorces you and the finances have been settled, the mother will rewrite her will, leaving more to her son. I can't approve of him lying about attending, but given your attitude and behavior, I understand why it seemed the best way to go at the moment. Congratulations, by the way, on having given your mother-in-law such a fantastic wedding gift. You presented her with the deed, free and clear, to the property known as the moral high ground. After what you pulled, it won't matter what she says or does to you. She'll be considered justified, and you gave her that before witnesses and probably on the wedding video. I was 15 when I met my stepdad. He met my mom 4 years after my dad died, leaving mom with my 3 younger siblings and me to raise. They were all tiny and hardly remembered dad and found it easier to go from him being Luke to dad over time. To me, he was always Luke. I was older, meeting him, almost out of the house when he and my mom got married, and I remember dad well. I'm not saying he was a bad guy or he did nothing, but I was working by the time he moved in, and I had a busy life, so there wasn't a lot of parenting from him, because when I needed something, I went to my mom. I also didn't go to college, so there was no paying for that. Also, he didn't adopt me. I think he's okay. I think he was what my mom and siblings needed, but it bothers him that I never needed him, and I pretty much never wanted him in the same capacity as my siblings. I thought he was great for my mom, but he wasn't someone I would seek out for life advice or a shoulder to cry on. And I'll go as far as saying that he's not my current father figure. That would go to my grandpa, whom I've known the longest and have turned to in times of trouble. I've looked up to him both as an individual and as a father/grandfather/husband to others. I got engaged recently, and Luke and I started fighting a lot. He assumed he'd be walking me down the aisle and doing a father-daughter dance with me. I told him he wasn't the person I was considering asking if I did that at all. Then he turns it into he's the most logical choice. I said mom would be. He pointed out that it's customary for the bride's father to do those things, and I pointed out my dad was dead, and if we were going to go down that line, my grandfather would be my obvious pick. He told me he'd been my dad for 9 years now. I was 16 when they got married. I said he didn't become my dad because he married my mom, which he argued he did. I told him it was ridiculous to think that because I was 16. I had memories of my dad, and was hardly around him during that time when compared to other members of the family. I told him I had always appreciated him for what he did for Mom and my siblings, but he needed to get over the fact that I didn't appreciate him as my siblings did. He called me an idiot and said I needed to accept that he was my father, whether I liked it or not. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It's perfectly valid for you to not see him as a father. He's lucky that you accept that he's good for the rest of the family. Plus, it's your wedding, and you're entitled to have a literal goo alien walking you down the aisle if that's your wish. Everyone who thinks otherwise can pound sand. Honestly, he's being the significant idiot here for cursing you out and demanding to be included. Step-parents need to accept that when they marry in, some of their new family may not be 100% accepting and move on. He did not become your dad by marrying your mom. He needs a reality check. He can't just decide that your father didn't exist. That is so disrespectful and downright cruel. Shame on your mother for letting him talk to you like that too. I hope your siblings even know about their real dad. My ex, 32 female, is a wreck of a human being, and unfortunately, I have 2 daughters with her that I share 50-50 custody. She has crippling anxiety and depression. While I know that they impact her daily life, I believe she also uses them as an excuse to be lazy. There are many reasons why I believe this, but when we were together, I noticed that she would always allow her anxiety and depression to hold her back from doing things she didn't want to do. Yet she never had any issues when something she wanted to do came around. Whether or not her issues are as bad as she claims, co-parenting with her has been a nightmare. It's one thing if she wants to use her conditions as a crutch in her own life, but she constantly uses them to ignore our kids. Both our daughters have told me that they can never talk with their mom about anything serious. If they want to do anything that mom doesn't want, depression and anxiety suddenly boil to the surface right before they do it. However, it has never been an issue when mom wants to do anything. Yesterday, I got a call from my daughters. Their mom was supposed to pick them up from after-school clubs, but had not shown up for nearly an hour. It's a 14-mile journey to their mom's house from their school, and the school buses no longer run when the clubs get out. Their mom was supposed to pick them up, and she had not been picking up her calls and ignored every text. I had to leave work early and take them to my house, where they stayed until my ex finally answered our call at 7 p.m. She claimed she was having an incredibly rough day, had not slept the night before, and only got to sleep at noon. The excuse of depression and anxiety came up again, and she said she knew I would pick them up, so she put her phone on mute and went to bed. I lost it. I told her that her disabilities do not excuse her from being a terrible mother and a lazy piece of crap. I won't get into what I entirely said to her after that here, but she was crying by the time I finished. I told her I'd also be taking her back to court to contest custody because I wouldn't allow something like this to happen again. My daughters are still with me right now, and when I asked my ex if she wanted them back for the rest of her week, she simply didn't respond. I've already sent over the documents to my lawyer, but when I told my mom the full story, she got furious with me. She claims that I was way out of line and that the entire situation was made 100 times worse by me. She also got an incredibly hostile text from my ex's sister telling me that my ex completely broke down and has been unable to function since yesterday. So now I'm wondering if I truly went overboard. Not the idiot. The line that sends this over the top is, "She knew you would." You definitely could have handled it better, and you didn't help the situation. But in truth, she was being neglectful. She should have called you and told you she wasn't feeling great and give you the heads up. I want to piggyback off this as a child whose mother had severe mental issues and didn't get help. My dad was able to get me full time, and I'm glad he did because I was neglected hard. So please get your daughters away from her. She's not doing justice and probably neglects them at her house too because of her issues. I always hate when people do the whole, well, you can always do what you want to do, but when you don't want to do something, suddenly your chronic illness is a problem. If her depression is so debilitating that she cannot be a parent, she shouldn't be allowed to be a parent. It also appears to me that she's using her illness as a form of weaponized incompetence. Ghosting children without informing anyone? Pardon? Nope, that's neglect. I have a daughter, teen, who's different from any teenager I've seen. The problem is she's extremely rude. I've tried many things to fix this, but nothing works. I never had these problems with my other kids. With them, I could just say no to electronics for a week or ground them or something like that, and it would be enough. But not for her. She doesn't care if I take away her electronics. She just picks up a few novels and starts reading them. She'll be glad if I ground her and use it as an excuse to avoid all our family gatherings like, "Oh, we're going to Auntie's home tonight. I wish I could come, but I'm grounded." And then happily goes to her room. The only thing that she likes is studying. Like, she'll spend hours studying. Last night when she was talking to her mom, she was being rude and very sarcastic. And as my last option, I told her that she's not allowed to study till I decide she's learned how to talk to her mom. She started to yell at us, called me an idiot, and said it wasn't fair. Then she called my brother, who called us, and told us we were idiots for not allowing her to study. But she gave us no other choice. You are the idiot, and your daughter's attitude issues aside, you have no idea how rare your daughter is. You have a kid who shrugs at her electronics being taken away and happily picks up novels in their stead. She enjoys studying and will spend hours at it without prompting. Did we step through time into some pre-internet wormhole where kids actively pursued and enjoyed reading things other than screens? It must have crossed your mind that your daughter could simply be neurodivergent or in need of therapy, and her perceived rudeness may be greatly tempered through feelings like her family is actively trying to understand and embrace what makes her unique, rather than punish her for not falling into line and expectations with your other kids. I bet OP's other kids are boys. I'm projecting, but I used to get scolded for being equally as rude as my brothers or parents, but I was a little girl, and it could be punished out of me. My dad literally said he does this to make me better. I'm still rude, but I'm the only kid to graduate and move out so far, and I moved very far away. I feel like a lot is missing from this story. What do you consider rude? Why is she avoiding family gatherings? Are you pushing her to do things she doesn't want to do and then having a rude reaction? It sounds like she misbehaves to get grounded, which could be a social or anxiety issue. She needs therapy, not punishment. I feel for OP's daughter, and I hope she gets the help and understanding she likely craves and most certainly deserves.